Welcome to the 700 Club. Let's go over to the CBN newsroom for today's top stories.
Gordon, a major victory for school choice at the U.S. Supreme Court as it ruled 5-4. Montana and by extension other states cannot ban government funding for religious institutions like schools. As Paul Strand reports, the justices told states if they're going to be offering something to private secular schools, they have to do it for religious ones as well.
The Espinoza case involved moms like Kendra Espinoza suing Montana, claiming the state was discriminating against their children's religious schools. In the end, that's how the court's conservative majority saw it, too. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, a state need not subsidize private education, but once a state decides to do so, it cannot disqualify some private schools solely because they are religious. The court's ruling defangs statewide provisions known as Blaine Amendments, enacted into dozens of state constitutions that discriminate against Catholics.
Blaine Amendments were written during a wave of anti-Catholic bigotry in the 1800s to stop Catholic schools from receiving aid. And today, they're used to discriminate against people of many faiths.
The court recognizes that Blaine Amendments have a bigoted history, and that history makes them unconstitutional. Today, they've been used to exclude any religious groups from government programs, and I'm happy to say that that discrimination should now be over.
This is a fabulous decision for families, for educational freedom. What this does is it allows families in dozens of states now to engage in a real conversation about having school choice programs.
The four more liberal justices all voted against Espinoza, with Justice Stephen Breyer writing, if for 250 years we have drawn a line at forcing taxpayers to pay the salaries of those who teach their faith from the pulpit, I do not see how we can today require Montana to adopt a different view respecting those who teach in the classroom.
We don't believe that you as a taxpayer should be compelled to fund anybody else's religious practices.
We are for school options. We do not believe in supporting religious institutions with taxpayer dollars.
But Kendra Espinoza points out religious schools often do a better job than the public schools, making them worthy of support.
I don't feel that there's enough teaching at the public school to teach my children how to develop character, and I wanted more for my children. I wanted them to be challenged more academically rather than just coast through and graduate.
The White House weighed in, saying we celebrate today's Supreme Court decision on religious schools, which removes one of the biggest obstacles to better educational opportunities for all children. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
And on our Faith Nation program on the CBN News Channel, Lindsay Burke, the director of the Center for Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation, explained why this ruling is so important for families who want to send their children to religious schools.
Today was just a huge win for both families and the Constitution. The court held that excluding religious schools from Montana's school choice program was simply unconstitutional, and that free exercise means that you cannot discriminate against people just because they are religious. So this was really just a huge win for families, a huge win for school choice, and a huge win for the Constitution overall. This really means at the end of the day, families participating in private school choice programs have the entire range of private schooling options available to them. And this is really critical because we know that families often choose schools based on whether or not those schools align with their values.
And as Paul Strand mentioned, President Trump's re-election campaign also weighed in, calling the decision a victory for educational freedom. Turning now to Israel, no vote today on the plan to annex biblical lands in the West Bank as had been planned. That comes after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman and White House envoy Avi Berkowitz. Netanyahu had set today as the first date to vote on extending Israeli sovereignty over parts of biblical Judea and Samaria, as first laid out in President Trump's Middle East peace plan.
With Avi Berkowitz and Ambassador Friedman and members of their delegation, I spoke about the question of sovereignty, which we're working on these days and will continue to work on in the coming days.
The peace plan was to allow Israel to extend sovereignty over 30% of the West Bank and leave 70% for a future Palestinian state. Israeli state-owned broadcaster Khan released a new map showing areas to come under Israeli civil law. Although Netanyahu said the government would work on the annexation in the days ahead, it is hard to say how long it will be until Israel actually moves ahead. Back here at home, the coronavirus continues to sweep across the country, spiking in more than 30 states. as Dr. Anthony Fauci is warning the numbers could shoot up much higher, as the U.S. could be on track to see 100,000 cases a day. Charlene Aaron has more in this story.
The U.S. is headed in the wrong direction on COVID-19. That's the warning from Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert. Fauci's warning comes as the nation sees some 40,000 new cases a day, numbers he told senators could more than double.
I would not be surprised if we go up to 100,000 a day if this does not turn around, and so I am very concerned. I think it's important to tell you and the American public that I'm very concerned because it could get very bad.
In California, the virus surging out of control with nearly 250,000 cases and over 100,000 cases in Los Angeles County alone. More than 6,000 have died in the state. 51-year-old Tommy Macias, a diabetic who wore a mask and practiced social distancing for months, died from the virus after attending a family barbecue. In Riverside County, ICUs filled to capacity.
We're seeing a large number of cases coming in where multiple family members are infected.
California Governor Gavin Newsom with this stern warning.
If you're not going to stay home and you're not going to wear masks in public, we have to enforce, and we will.
Bars and beaches once again closed. In Imperial County, this tent set up outside of a hospital to handle the overflow of patients. In Florida, more than 150,000 cases reported, with most in Miami-Dade County. Several cities now requiring residents to wear masks.
Just wear the darn mask.
Studies show that talking helps the virus to spread, and wearing a mask can reduce it by some estimates up to 50%.
Stay healthy.
This man lost his father to COVID-19 and says masks could have made a difference.
If the people that, we saw were wearing masks, he'd probably still be alive.
Meanwhile, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, where thousands have died from the virus, have issued a 14-day quarantine on people traveling from California and 15 other states where the virus is surging. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
The coronavirus outbreak has not kept the Army's old guard from carrying out its duty. CBN's Gabe LaMonica brings us the story of the soldiers tasked with guarding and burying our nation's heroes.
For now, Arlington National Cemetery is closed to the public, with funerals closed to the media. Still, the mission of the old guard here continues. The final call plays on. Those 24 notes known as taps, marking the end of a day on base. And a national song of tribute to fallen heroes. Even in the midst of a pandemic, this remains a place immune to change. From the eternal flame marking the grave of President John F. Kennedy to the tomb of the unknown, where the old guard stands watch over the resting place of unnamed soldiers.
In keeping with the dignity of the ceremony, it is requested that everyone remain silent and standing.
The usual crowds who silently watched this ceremonial changing of the guard are absent now. But the American soldier known but to God remains under constant and meticulous watch.
For us, it doesn't matter if it's a hurricane or, in this case, if it's a pandemic. We are always here. We are always guarding.
Through a hurricane and even during the 9/11 terror attacks, in rain, snow, sleet, and gloom of night, these watchmen have kept a 24-hour-a-day vigil for more than 80 years. And the coronavirus isn't about to scratch that record.
It's a crazy look.
But this is the first time they've worn masks in close quarters.
Heirs, hope.
And masks are now worn during funeral services and burials.
Please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service.
Even as the nation's veterans and their families continue to receive full military honors.
The unknowns deserve that. Our country deserves that. This place represents the very best of this country. Quite frankly, at a time in which we need reminding of what our very best looks like.
That very best represented by an elite group of soldiers, sometimes standing still as statues. This is the oldest active duty regiment in the U.S. Army. But beyond the pomp and circumstance, the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment is a fully trained and certified Army combat unit. To serve as a sentinel and what is known as the official escort to the president is considered one of the Army's highest honors. For them, the honor is in the mission. The guards don't wear masks while keeping watch, but they do keep their social distance during the changing of the guard and the all-important uniform inspection. The motto of the old guard, touch me not. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Arlington National Cemetery.